This is the moment you've all been waiting for.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back at it with another episode of Talkin MMA. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, stick with us. Episode number 11. We're picking up some momentum here. We got UFC Columbus. It was fun, man. We had the live gates back for the UFC fight nights. It's something that we haven't had in a long time. It's no secret that we had this whole pandemic. The whole world shut down for obvious reasons. And as did the UFC for a brief amount of time, but they actually did come back. They started putting on shows, but even when they did put on these shows, they were sort of trailblazing the path back to some normalcy. It was empty. Every fucking arena was empty that they were in. And it brought a new dimension to fighting. It brought a new, maybe not dimension, but a new perspective for fans. But I think we could all agree that with the fans back, it's 1,000 times better. So now we are back to 100% fans. We got fans for the pay-per-views. We know that's already been an ongoing thing for some time now. And now we got the fans back for the UFC fight nights. So it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be more exciting. We're going to have more iconic moments now because you can't beat the roar of an audience when there's a big fight in your rounds 4 or 5, whatever the case may be. It just tops everything. So let's start off with some of these fights on this card. We got Neil Magny versus Max Griffin. Now, this was a very interesting fight because here's the thing that we know about Neil. We know that Neil's tough. We know that Neil's durable. Max Griffin is a tough guy as well. You could almost see towards the end of, say, round 2, beginning of round 3, around that point that Max is starting to wear out. It almost seemed like Max survived the 3rd round of that fight. It almost seemed like he was barely hanging on. Neil definitely had him. If that was a 5-round fight, we can clearly see that it was going in the direction of a Neil Magny regardless, maybe even by a finish, because Max Griffin was wearing down. But in round 1, Max just put it on him. It was tough for Neil, but he did survive that. And round 2, I also had Max winning round 2 as well. I don't know how you guys scored that, but I had Max Griffin winning the 2nd round. So here's the thing. Neil Magny did win this fight by a split decision, but I actually had Max Griffin winning the first 2 rounds. So how do you want to score that? It's tough. It's a dilemma where, you sort of harp back to the John Jones versus Dominic Reyes fight in the sense that one guy clearly won the majority of the rounds, won more rounds than the other guy in the fight, whether it be a 3 or a 5, but the other guy that ended up winning closed out the last round or the last couple rounds convincingly in the fight. So it's similar in that sense, but I don't know, I guess it all depends on how you would score that, how you interpret that, but my thinking is if you won 2 rounds, you won the fight, right? I mean, was round 3 a 10-8? We could pull up the fight stats. Neil was putting it on him, but was it really like a 10-8 kind of round, that round 3? I don't remember exactly. So round 1, we had significant strikes was 30-16 for Max Griffin. So again, Max clearly won round 1. That was round 1 and round 3 were very easy to score. It wasn't that hard. Round 2, Max, I also thought that Max won that fight as well. And he won on the significant strikes, in that department. He outnumbered Neil Magny 30-26. Now we get to round 3 where obviously, Neil wins the round. He outlands him 12-7. Neil actually ends up getting a takedown, 1 of 5 on the takedown attempts though. But he does win the round nonetheless. It's looking like Max is hanging on here. But again, if a guy wins 2 rounds of the fight, what more can he do? And I did feel bad for Max at the end of it because it would have been a good fight. It's a good name to get on your resume, right? You beat a guy like Neil Magny and, we're talking now, right? Now we've got something to work with. So, again, man, just tough. Tough. You look at the rankings at welterweight right now. Was Max ranked? So, Neil Magny, and today is Wednesday, so, contrary to doing the show on a Monday or a Tuesday, we got the updated rankings now. So that's a good thing. So we got Neil Magny's number 9. Neil Magny's number 9 at welterweight. It does not look like Max Griffin was ranked. So, okay. But it makes sense. Neil's not in the top 5 or anything. So, taking an unranked opponent to get back on track is certainly a good thing, a smart thing to do. But Max is no scrub. Max is a very good fighter. I think he proved a lot in this fight, regardless, that he can hang with some of the top guys in the division, because we know Neil Magny's a top guy. Again, Neil's very durable. Neil is, his cardio-wise, you know that he's going to be there, even if it's a 5-round fight. So it's interesting. He called out Khamzat Chimaev after the fight. And we know that, credit, say what you want about Neil Magny, one thing is to be true. He's been calling out Khamzat Chimaev for a couple of years now, at least, since I could remember, 2-3 years now. You know, he's wanted that Khamzat fight. Why is that relevant? Nobody wants the Khamzat fight. This man is just terrifying. And he's terrifying, and understandably so. You know, I think we could all agree with that. I think this is a guy that is, if not a future world champion, which I think he is, at least a guy who's going to be a top 5 contender. And we're talking 2 weight classes here, maybe simultaneously, which, has that ever been done? I don't think so. You know, we've had double champions and all that, but have we ever had a true contender in 2 weight classes simultaneously where he's in the top 10 of 2 divisions or top 5? But that's not the case. Let's get back to the whole Neil Magny stuff. So Neil's number 9. And yeah, I mean, he called out Khamzat, so it is relevant to the argument. But is that a fight that I would want to see at this point in time now? No, for obvious reasons. Khamzat versus Gilbert Burns, it's been booked. You know, and if it's not been booked, it is about to be booked. You know, at least contracts, I would think, have surely been signed or have at least been agreed upon. You know, I would think there's something there, at least some contractual terms that have been agreed upon or something, you know? So I got to say that Neil's not really in the position now where that, you know, because after this fight, why would Khamzat fight Neil Magny? You know? Someone tell me that. Like, why would Khamzat even fight Neil Magny? And I get the call out. It was a bold one from Neil. But here's the thing, right? You never know what could happen. You know, maybe Gilbert, God forbid, pulls out with an injury. Something happens, whatever the case may be. Or maybe even Khamzat pulls out and Neil says, fuck it. Well, not really. But, yeah, no. But, yeah, you never know what could happen. You know, like, what if, again, Gilbert gets hurt and then Neil Magny steps in, whatever the case may be. You know, it's good to at least have your name in the hat. Even if there's no realistic chance of fighting the guy, if you're calling the guy out, it keeps you relevant in the division. It keeps your name in the loop, you know? So I think that's a good thing. I think he played his hand wisely there, even though it's a matchup that doesn't look realistic because, again, the Burns fight's booked. Let's move on to Askar Askarov versus Kai Kara-France. Now, this was a very good fight. I did have Kai Kara-France winning. I thought it was going to be, it was a unanimous decision, right? Let's see. Yeah, it was a unanimous decision, and that surprised me. I thought it was going to be like a split decision, but I did have Kai Kara-France winning. I was very scared that they were going to give it to Askar Askarov just because of how much they value wrestling and all that. But again, I don't really see that Askarov did more damage than Kai. You know, Kai was going for it. Kai was engaging in a fight. You know, Askarov was just going for the legs. But here's the thing. Overall, let's just start it off with round 1. You know, round 1, Kai did land him 4-3 in the significant strike department, but that was irrelevant because Askarov was 1 of 4 on takedowns. The takedown that he did get, he did a good job with it. He was able to hold Ty down enough. He was able to get strikes on the ground, 13 total strikes in the round, a lot of those being on the ground. And, yeah, you know, it was pretty obvious that Askar Askarov won the round. You know, he clearly won round 1, and the game plan was working for him at that point. We get into round 2, and then we got Kai Kara-France clearly winning that round. So now we got round 1, Askar Askarov clearly won the round. Round 2, Kai Kara-France clearly won the round. So we got it 1-1 going into the third. But just to harp on round 2, Kai outlands him 24-12 in the significant strike department, and he goes 1 for 7 on takedowns, Askar Askarov. And then Kai actually did have him hurt, have him a little bit wobbled out on his feet a little bit there for a few moments in time. And Askar was just shooting for takedowns in desperation. And Kai was able to just push off, and he was able to keep the fight standing. A very good job in that. And it reflects on the 1 for 7 takedowns in round 2, because Kai did neutralize the takedowns very well. Then we get into round 3, right? And this is a close round, right? It's a close round, but if you look at how it all played out, this is why it was a close round. If you're talking about just overall damage and standing and just, I guess, the overall arc of round 3, I'd say Kai did way more and won the round. Significant strike department proves it because he outstruck him 23-12. But here's the thing. Askar Askarov, if I'm not mistaken, did get him in a clincher and a takedown, and it was looking like, oh shit, he's going to control him again. You know, he's going to do what he did in round 1 to him. No, that didn't happen. Kai was able to get himself out of that position, get the fight to where he wanted it to be, standing, and Kai was going for it. Kai was he was going. It looked like he wanted to knock him out. He wanted to finish it. He was going for it. He said, he was pointing in the middle of the cage, like, let's fight right now. And I think that showed a lot to the judges. All the judges also saw a guy in Askar Askarov who was taking him down, but wasn't doing much damage with it. He's a guy that was clearly just looking to hold him, and no shame in that. I'm not faulting the guy for that. But Askar Askarov was clearly just looking to take him down and ride out the round. Like, he wasn't even looking to do damage on him. He was probably just going to stay on top of him on the ground and not do much with it, really. Just ride it out, because he's clearly a very good wrestler, a very good grappler, and clearly had the advantage in both departments on Kai Kara-France. But didn't work that way. Kai Kara-France won that fight. And hey, man, credit to him, because the guy's rising up now. If we take a look at the state of the flyweight division, because it's getting more interesting. Can we admit that? Like, was it that interesting a couple years ago? No, it wasn't. Or maybe not a couple years ago. Yeah, I guess you could say a couple years ago, 2-3 years ago. It wasn't interesting, man. It wasn't. Even like the Cejudo thing, it was more so just a dominant champion, and there was maybe 1 or 2 contenders there that were fun. But now we got a division where we got some nice, fun contenders. We had a nice rivalry at the top with the champion, the number 1 contender. It's a very interesting and exciting division now. It's always been exciting, I guess, scratch that, but now it's interesting, So we look at that division, and we got Deiveson Figueiredo and Moreno, right? And Brandon Moreno. And you got to think that those 2 guys are going to fight. But now we're starting to get things online, buzz. Deiveson Figueiredo claims that Brandon Moreno made racist comments or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that, but it's something along those lines. And Deiveson's pretty much saying, fuck this guy. I don't want to fight him. So it's interesting. What could play out there? Are we going to see Kai Kara-France maybe step in and fight Deiveson? Now that Deiveson's saying he doesn't want to fight him, because, I don't know, do the champions have a say in the matchmaking to some extent? Or maybe they don't clearly indicate, I want to fight this guy clearly. This number 7 ranked guy, number 4, number 3. But do they have say in terms of like, the UFC comes to you and says, hey, man, look, these are 2 top guys. They both kind of deserve it. Who do you want to fight? Maybe he has say in that sense. So to that, I say that Brandon Moreno and Deiveson Figueiredo may not happen, and we may see Kai Kara-France versus Deiveson Figueiredo. Look, Kai now is number 2. Again, Wednesday's a good day because that's when the UFC updates their rankings, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe Tuesday late, but I know by Wednesday you're good. Kai Kara-France is 2. Moved up 4 slots from 6. Askar Askarov's 3, right? He's out of it right now. Pantoja's good, but we could say he's not in it. Alex Perez not in it. Royval not yet, I mean, listen, these guys are good. I like Tim Elliott. I like some of these guys in the division, but right now, clearly it's only Brandon Moreno and Kai Kara-France sitting at the top of that division, threatening the champion, Deiveson Figueiredo. That's it, that's it. Who the UFC chooses to go with, from a box office perspective, if you want to sell pay-per-views, if you want to excite fans, if you want to bring in more of that casual mainstream audience, just say, if you want to sell pay-per-views, you want to put that on the co-main event of a pay-per-view, or maybe even the main event now, if it'll be the fourth ever fight in UFC history, you could do that. So box office, I'll give the advantage to Figueiredo and Moreno, right? But if we're talking about what makes sense for the sport, for the infrastructure of the sport, how it should play out, morally, ethically, all that shit, Kai Kara-France should probably be fighting for the title next. I don't see why he wouldn't, with the exception of them doing Moreno versus Figueiredo. So that's that. Now we got Matt Brown versus Brian Barberena. This was a good fight. We had Matt Brown was the local guy, the big pop from the crowd. And it was a good fight, man. It was maybe the fight of the night. Did that get fight of the night? Because I think that was up there for me. Askar Askarov versus Kai Kara-France, the one we just talked about, was also a great fight. But Matt Brown versus Brian Barberena might have been the fight of the night for UFC Columbus. And Matt Brown just brings a fight. And Brian Barberena brings a fight as well. And that's why it was a good fight. That's why it was an exciting fight. We were looking forward to that. We pull up the stats now per round. I did have Matt Brown winning round 1. I thought that was pretty clear that he'd won round 1. So we pull up the stats here, and it was close. The significant strikes were 23 all. But Matt Brown did get that takedown. And here's something that impressed me. If we're talking about Matt Brown, we're talking about a guy who is, when he gets you in the inside, in the grappling exchanges, you know, once he gets a hold of you, right? Once he gets anywhere near you, within a foot of you or whatever, this guy is going to do, you know, a lot of people can't keep up with him. You know, he's very skilled in that department. Bryan Barberena in that inside game was able to play very well with Matt Brown and make it a very interesting fight, make it a dog fight. And that's exactly what it was. It was a fucking war, man. So I did have Matt Brown winning round 1. Round 2 was close because obviously we had Bryan Barberena hurt him at the end of the round pretty bad, but it depends on how you score it, right? I could say I thought Matt won it. I could say Bryan Barberena won it. I think Matt won it because even though he was a bit hurt there at the end, he was kind of in danger there at the end. He was 2 for 2 on his takedowns, you know, 100% there. In the significant strike department, Bryan Barberena, again, did land more, did have him hurt. But I thought Matt was controlling the round. I thought he was controlling the pace of the round more. I thought he was just leading the dance more in round 2. Now, hey, call me crazy on that one, but I just thought... sometimes you can't look at a round and look at the statistics of a round and just judge it from there flat out. You know, a lot of times it just plays out differently, you know? And I think in this round, I thought Matt Brown did win the fight. Did win the round rather. So I had Matt Brown up 2-0 at this point. If you had it 1-all for Barberena, whatever, you know, I get it. Maybe even if you even had it 2-0 for Barberena, you know, I wouldn't agree with that, but it was a close fight, man. So we get into round 3. Barberena clearly wins this one, right? Clearly. You know, I think the 2 clearest rounds of the fight was definitely 3, but after that it was probably 1, which I thought Matt won. So, you know, Barberena wins this round, and, you know, he did win the fight. And here's a reason why, even though I had Matt Brown winning, I'm okay with it. Matt Brown, if there was 30 seconds left on the clock, was he making it out of round 3? You know, the guy was stumbling all over the place. No disrespect, but he's a guy who's an aged vet. He's been in the game for a long time, and you have to question whether his chin is what it used to be, at least. Not that he doesn't have I'm not saying he doesn't have a chin. He clearly went through a war, 3-round war, and showed that he's a tough guy, can take shots. But is his chin what it used to be at age 30, 31, 32? You know, what is the guy now, 40? Something like that? So it makes you wonder, you know, if he were to get in there with another Barberena, you know, would something like that happen where he gets put out the next time? You know, it makes you wonder. But again, the guy's towards the end of his career now. We're not expecting, you know, a world champion here. So it was exciting to see him nonetheless. You know, it was exciting to see him loved by the crowd. You know, he's a guy who's been in the sport for a long time, you know, the immortal Matt Brown. And I've been a fan of his for a long time. So I was excited. I was hoping he would win. You could tell he really fucking wanted to win that fight. But, hey, man. And he had that guy in his corner, too. What is that guy's... You know the video where the guy pushes Joe Rogan, grabs him by the neck, and, like, fucking just shoves him? This guy used to be an MMA fighter. He used to fight in the UFC early on. Early UFCs. What is his name? Let me look that up. Mark Coleman. There we go. How the fuck did I forget that? Mark Coleman was in Matt Brown's corner, so that was awesome to see, you know? I haven't seen Mark Coleman around in a while, since that whole Joe Rogan shit, which I don't think there's anything wrong about that. You know, it looked like 2 guys maybe had a few drinks that night, but it was just funny to see Mark Coleman in the corner. Nonetheless, that's irrelevant. I thought Matt won. Again, Bryan Barberena won the fight. Good for him. He looks like he's a tough guy. And I can't argue it because round 2... Again, a lot of people probably thought he won round 2. I had it for Matt Brown. I'm not going to argue you on that. But again, round 2 was like a 50-50 kind of round. And then round 3, it looked like he was going to finish him at any moment towards the end of it. So, you know, Bryan Barberena winning the... I'm almost thinking Bryan Barberena won the fight now. Like, I almost don't have a problem with it. Maybe I'm just biased because I'm a big fan of Matt Brown. You know, I guess that... Maybe I'm just biased there. Joanne Wood versus Alexa Grasso. Now, this was... a quick fight. It ended early, right? We had Alexa Grasso finishing her via rear naked choke in that first round. And, hey, I mean, listen, I'm a fan of Joanne. You know, I'm sure it was a tough loss for her. She's been in the game for some time now. But Alexa Grasso seems to have been around for some time now, and she's getting better and better. And I know she's still young. You know, she's very young. She's probably, what, 20-something years old still. But she's been around for some time now. She's getting better. She's evolving her game. You know, she's shown that she could do very well in the stand-up. She can hold her own at the very least. And now she's showing those improvements on the ground. You know, there was a beautiful transition to get her into the rear naked choke and to lock it in, finish the fight. It was a statement win for her. It was a good win. So we pull up the rankings now at flyweight, and we got obviously the champion by dominant fashion all the time, Valentina Shevchenko. And we got Alexa Grasso, who's now ranked number 5. She's moved up 4 spots, so she's cracked into that top 5. Joanne Calderwood has fallen 3 spots, so she's number 10 now. Again, tough loss for her. Didn't do her great in the rankings. But now that we got Alexa Grasso in the top 5, maybe a Tyler Santos, Tyler Santos fight would be fun. You know, number 4 ranked. Lauren Murphy could be fun. That could be a fun matchup. Kaylin Chikagian could be fun. Jessica Andrade, I think, is already booked for a fight. So why not? You know, and if she wins one more fight, why not get her in there for the title? You know, why not? She's looking like she's improving her game. She's looking like she's becoming a well-rounded mixed martial artist, improving in all departments. So it's something I think can be some fresh blood in that division if she could win another fight or two for sure for Valentina Shevchenko. And surely, we all know that she needs it. We all know that she needs that fresh blood in the division. The main event, Curtis Blaydes versus Chris Daukaus. Curtis Blaydes finally got that knockout he's been wanting. Finally got that highlight reel knockout, you know? And it's obvious that he wanted that. You know, the reason I say that is because he said it, I don't know how many times. He said it after the fight. He said it in an interview with Ariel Helwani a couple days ago saying, hey, man, I really wanted that knockout. I want to start exciting the people. And he said it in the post-fight interview. He wanted to get that finish. So it was clear that Curtis Blaydes wanted to end that fight in spectacular fashion. The reason why is because a lot of people give him flack for saying that he doesn't end fights in spectacular fashion. He does quite the opposite. He just wrestles you to death. But here's the thing. I don't know if that's necessarily true, guys. Is he doing what like a Colby Covington would do, like an Askar Askarov would do even in the fight against Cara France? Like, is he just holding you down and doing nothing with it? You know, I don't think so. If you look at what he did against Alice Strovering, just mauled him with the forearms. You know, look what he did against JDS, knocked him out spectacularly there too. Like, the guy is exciting. He does finish people. Like, his ground and pound, the guy's got vicious fucking ground and pound because he's a very big, very powerful guy and a very good wrestler. So he's good at manipulating weight on the ground, good with leveraging weight. And once he gets on top of you on the ground, it's pretty much over. But he's not just going to hold you there. Again, he's going to do damage. He's a very good guy. And if you look at his record, which I believe only has 3 losses, right? 15-3. So the guy's lost to Francis Ngannou, the best heavyweight on the planet right now, far and away. Maybe not far and away, but the best heavyweight on the planet right now. Lost to the guy twice. Okay, I mean, no shame in that. And then he lost to Derek Lewis. That's it. Other than that, he's never lost. He's never lost to any other heavyweight contender, never lost to anyone else. He's been in the top 5 for a couple years now. It's clear that he wanted the interim title fight, just like it's clear that he wanted that highlight reel knockout, because he was saying it after the fight. Like, I want to get that interim title fight. Put me in there with Cyril Gane. There was a funny moment where, the guy who was interviewing him, I think it was Bisping, said, hey, look, there's Stipe Miocic in the crowd. Anything you want to say to him? And he starts talking to Stipe almost, not calling him out, but like a friendly kind of way to say, let's fight, whatever. And Stipe, I don't know if he just purposely didn't hear him or maybe just really didn't hear him. Stipe is just taking pictures of fans, getting the hell out of Dodge, basically, looking like he wants to beat traffic. That's exactly what it looked like. So, again, though, like with that microphone, it's pretty fucking loud in the arena. Like, you could hear it pretty well. If you've ever been to an MMA event, like in those post-fight interviews, the mics are intended for the audience to hear you. Pretty loudly, I might add. So, did Stipe hear him? He probably just wasn't paying attention to what was being said. He probably thought Bisping was just interviewing Curtis Blaydes, asking him, how was the fight, this, that, and the other. So, again, I saw a couple people say, oh, maybe Stipe was just looking to avoid him. He said, fuck that, you're not on my level kind of deal. But I don't think that was the case at all. You know, I'm sure they respect each other, and Stipe probably just didn't hear him. It's just funny to speculate. Anyway, off that soliloquy, Curtis Blaydes versus Curtis Daukaus, right? Chris Daukaus, sorry about that. Now, we know Chris Daukaus looked like he was going to have the striking advantage in that fight, on the stand-up, obviously, but Curtis Blaydes actually did look better, looked fresher, looked a bit quicker standing up in the stand-up, which was a pleasant surprise for me. And we know that Curtis Blaydes said a couple days ago in an interview, he said that, once I felt this guy's power, because he hit me pretty flush with an overhand right, he said once I felt his power, it was pretty much nothing. Like, he was even urging that the guy move down to 205 because his power was kind of irrelevant to him. But, yeah, that's how Curtis Blaydes felt about it. And he said, once I felt his power, he said whatever. So I guess he was just didn't really fear his power and was able to walk through punches enough to set something up. And the way he set up that knockout was beautiful. It was. So if you see a guy now who could start knocking people out like that, who is the guy a great striker? No. But there's guys who aren't great strikers that you could see have some pop in their hand, right? Curtis Blaydes got some pop in his hand. Now, granted, he's a heavyweight, right? And you say, oh, any heavyweight has pop, right? But did Chris Daukaus have pop in his hands? No. So, for example, that just shows you not every heavyweight has power like that. Curtis Blaydes has reasonable power within the heavyweight division. He could put you out if he lands flush. We've seen him do it to JDS, now Daukaus. So we've even seen him do it on the ground against, again, like a guy like Alistair Overeem. So he's beat his fair share of legends, Is it crazy to say, and I don't talk about the fight much because it did end fairly quickly, right? He just finished him there in the first round. And he didn't even go for a takedown, which was fairly shocking to me. He did finish him in the first round, right? Because it did feel like a quick fight. Okay, no, it went into the second round. So Curtis Blaydes finished him in the second round. My apologies. But it just felt like a quick, dominant victory for Curtis Blaydes. Total strikes, he outlanded him 30-13. And significant strikes, 30-13. So you look at Curtis Blaydes now, you look at the state of the heavyweight division, the rankings. He's a guy who's always going to be there, right? We just said he wants to fight for the interim title, right? We just brought that up. Is that something that I envision him doing? I don't know, because when you look at Curtis Blaydes, now he didn't move anywhere in the heavyweight division. So we look at now the updated rankings at heavyweight, Curtis Blaydes has not moved. It sort of tells you what Dana thinks. It sort of tells you what the matchmakers think. You got to do more. Show me more. Now, granted, top 4, if you're number 4 in the division, it's not crazy for you to fight for a title or for an interim title at the very least, now that Francis is injured, right? Anyone in the top 5 can fight for a title. It's not out of the ordinary, So Curtis Blaydes to be number 4 now, if he's called upon to fight for an interim title, it wouldn't be crazy. But I think a guy like Tai Tuivasa probably deserves it more than him at this point because he's just been showing it more. He's on like a 4 or 5 fight win streak at this point, and he's showing it. He's finishing guys. He's doing what Curtis Blaydes wants to do. He's that. He's almost the opposite of Curtis with the exception of the couple fights where he finished those guys, right, that we just mentioned. But Tai is pretty much the opposite. Tai is not engaging in wrestling, and he just wants to have a slugfest in the middle of the octagon. Curtis Blaydes, if he does strike, he wants to set up his shots. He's not going to go in there and slug it out with you. He wants to wrestle, and he wants to strike, but at his own pace. He's not going to make it an absolute war, dogfight. And that's what Tai wants to do. But that also draws a rating. That draws excitement from fans. That draws intrigue. So I think that's something that's going to benefit him. And again, now we got Stipe Miocic at number 2. Tai just, again, let's harp back to something that Curtis Blaydes also said. The third thing he said if Stipe fights for the title, if they want to get him in there next, he said, I can't fault him. He said he deserves it. I can't even be mad about that. Something along those lines, he said. And I agree with that. No offense to him. Stipe Miocic, if you're talking about an interim title or something along those lines, again, with Francis being out, Stipe is in the game, man, more than anyone, really. Because Cyril Gane just lost to the champion. You just lost pretty clear to the champion. It was a good fight, but you clearly lost, right? It wasn't like a crazy close fight. So you don't really deserve a title shot next. Again, Cyril will be there, but he's got to get a win or 2 back. Stipe is pretty much the only one. Now, you can say, oh, yeah, but Stipe is the same fucking thing as Cyril, but worse because he got knocked out by Francis. True, but Stipe is also the greatest heavyweight of all time. Stipe holds multiple records in the heavyweight division. Does Cyril Gane? Cyril Gane's a newcomer. He still has to prove himself more. And then we got Derek Lewis, and, we'll disqualify that quick. Love Derek Lewis, but if he's not at the end of the road right now in his career, which is what it looks like, and then it looks like he's a guy who is, at the very least, slowing down. It doesn't look like he's a top 3, 4 guy anymore. And, it makes you wonder, because didn't Derek Lewis retire? a few years ago or something like that, and then he came out of retirement. So even when things like that happen, it makes you question the guy's motor. Now, I know he loves money, and I'm not saying he's like a fucking gold digger or whatever the case. I'm not saying he's in it for the money, but again, his words, not mine. He said, I'm fucking fighting for money. Like, that's why people love Derek Lewis. He's so blunt. And that's what he said, you know. I'm sure he loves the game to some extent. I'm sure he actually has fun doing it, contrary to what he might say. But he is in it for the money, right? And if the passion's not there anymore and you're getting knocked out and you already have a decent life outside the octagon, he looks like he's made some smart moves financially. You've listened to interviews he's had and whatnot. And it looks like he's bought properties. You know, he's a fairly well-known name out there in Houston, so I'm sure he's making waves for himself. So he maybe doesn't even need fighting anymore. So, again, I think we could eliminate him. And then we have a guy who should probably be ranked ahead of Derek Lewis and Tom Aspinall at number 6. Yeah, Derek Lewis should not be number 5 and Tom Aspinall 6. Tom Aspinall should be 5. Derek Lewis should be 6. You know? Tom's just been doing a lot better lately than Derek. You know, it's also a momentum thing. Even though he hasn't faced Derek and Derek's just been higher than him the whole time, I don't think it should work that way necessarily. I thought Tom Aspinall was going to be in the top 5 already. It's kind of disappointing. But he also said he's not ready for a title fight quite yet. But is an interim title is not really a title fight per se. It's almost like a number 1 contender fight. Because again, Tom Aspinall did say that he's almost not ready for a title fight, which is shocking. He's like, I could see myself fighting for a title in like 2024. And when I saw those comments, it took me by surprise. I was like, 2024? You could almost fight for the title next. And like, you're saying this now in 2022. What do you mean 2024? That kind of, it doesn't worry me, but it makes me question where he thinks he's at right now, where he thinks he can compete at the top tier of that division. So again, you look at heavyweight, those are really all the relevant guys right now. Everyone else is just ranked too low or has had a setback. So if you look at it that way, it's not crazy for Curtis Blaydes to fight for an interim title. You know, his name's in the hat, you know. Cyril Gane could be fighting for an interim title. Stipe, Ty, Curtis Blaydes, and Tom Aspinall. It's not crazy to think any one of those 5 guys could be fighting for a title. It's just not crazy to think that for an interim title, you know. If I have to pinpoint 2 that I think are the most deserving out of that division, I'm going to have to say I think it's Stipe Miocic and Tai Tuivasa. That's just what I think. You know, Tom Aspinall says he's not ready yet. You know, that might just disqualify you there. Derek Lewis, obviously not. Curtis Blaydes, maybe, but I don't think so. He still has to get a couple wins under his belt, I think. And the mere fact that he hasn't moved in the UFC rankings, again, shows you what the UFC thinks about that win. It didn't move him up, so it didn't really add much stock to his name, really. Tai Tuivasa, yes, he can definitely. If Ty or Aspinall were thrown into that, the interim title fight that I'd make is Stipe versus Tuivasa, rather. So the interim title fight that I would make is Stipe versus Tuivasa. If they want to insert Cyril Gane or Tom Aspinall, mix and match any of those guys, I wouldn't mind. Even Razor Blaydes to an extent. But for Razor Blaydes to be an interim title fight, somebody's going to have to have been injured or another fight booked, some circumstance like that. Because if they just straight up pick Curtis Blaydes out of those 5 guys to fight for an interim title, you know, if they pick 2 of those guys and one of them is Curtis Blaydes, that just wouldn't make any sense to me. Again, no disrespect, but I think he's still a fight or 2 away because he has had his setbacks. And again, it's a tough fight to sell because you're 0-2 to the champion. So is Dana or the matchmakers out there, are they going to want to make you the interim champion? What if you become the interim champion? Like, and you're the interim champion now, but everyone knows you were 0-2 against Ngannou. Is that a fight that's so exciting to build up? You know, is it a fight that people really want to see? Right now, it's not. If he can knock out a few more people, if he can knock out Cyril, Aspinall, or whatever, wrestle fuck them to death, whatever the case may be, if he could do that, hey, man, then we might be talking about him saying like a Colby Covington. Like, hey, this guy could challenge a champion. Who gives a fuck that he lost the first 2 times? So it's interesting. So that's UFC Columbus. All right, so given that we don't have like an upcoming pay-per-view this week or a fight night, that's going to be on April 9th. So it's not this weekend. It's going to be the next one. let's just talk about some big fights that are coming up this year in 2022, right? The fights that we have that are officially announced on the UFC website. Not all of them, of course, because that's a shitload, but let's talk about some of the more exciting ones. We'll even get into a couple of them that are on the UFC 273 fight, that are on the UFC 273 card, like what they mean, all that, their importance, not necessarily like the logistics of the fight, like the actual breakdown of it. But I guess what it means for the state of the division, what it means for the fighters. And I want to start with one that, again, in UFC 273, we're not going to break down the whole card. The whole card is going to be broken down in the next episode because that's going to be fight week for UFC 273. But let's touch on a couple fights that are exciting on this card, or maybe one that isn't that exciting. Alexander Volkanovski versus Korean Zombie. I got to be honest here, full transparency, I'm not that excited about this fight. I think Volkanovski will just win it going away. If he doesn't finish him, then it'll just be like a 5-round unanimous decision. I think Volkanovski, that might even be what I anticipate, actually, because Korean Zombie could stay in there, hold his own. But again, it's not a fight that I'm excited to see because this feels like it's not even the first or second best option at this point, or the first or second biggest threat at this point to Volkanovski. You know, it's obviously Max Holloway. That fight obviously has to happen. I think if Max, if I'm not mistaken, was supposed to be in this position, was Max not supposed to be the guy fighting him right now? So it's interesting because Volkanovski kind of shat on Max a little bit, saying, "Oh, Max pulled out of an injury and now he wants to be pulled out of an injury for this fight, and now he wants to be the substitution in case of an injury or weigh in as an alternative." I think it was something like that, and it kind of bothered Volkanovski. But I mean, if Max Holloway got hurt, what do you want him to do? Maybe the injury was recovered in a far quicker time than anticipated, you know? Things like that happen. But the whole Volkanovski situation just bugs me. If you followed the podcast for like the first 10 episodes, you know that I don't hate Volkanovski. I realize that him and Max are 1A and 1B, but I do think Max Holloway should be the UFC champion, and that just fucking eats me away, honestly. It does. Because if you see the second fight and you have a pair of eyes at work, you know who won the fight. You know, Dana came out and said in the post-fight interview that Max clearly won the fight. Anyone in that room full of media, not that it really matters, would have told you that Max clearly won the fight. Anyone of any note really in the MMA space of expertise, anyone in that category, pretty much for the most part thought Max Holloway won. Like, I didn't see anyone with real credibility, with real knowledge of the sport, which, you know, there's obviously a lot of those out there. I didn't see any of those people saying that Max Holloway lost that fight, that Alexander Volkanovski won that fight. I didn't see it that way. So it's weird because whenever I see him with the title, it's almost like Max should have the title. To me, it's weird. They should be preparing to go into a trilogy right now, one apiece, and Max should be the champion, but that's not the case. That's not what bothers me about this fight. Again, I love watching Volkanovski fight, even if it's not against Holloway, because I know he's that guy. He's up there with Max, regardless of who you want to pick out of the two. If Volkanovski came out and won the trilogy, which I would think it's eventually going to happen, I wouldn't fault Volkanovski. I mean, obviously I'm not going to fault him, but I wouldn't be upset, rather, because the better man's going to win. And Max hasn't shown that he's clearly better than Volkanovski. Again, it's 1A, 1B, but I think it's yet to be determined as to who the 1A is, who the true 1A is. But we'll see, you know. That's not my gripe with this fight. My big issue with this fight is I don't think it should be happening again. Now, is Volkanovski, is a Korean Zombie, does he have a shot? Yeah, he's got a shot. Does anyone have a shot in this game when you're wearing 4-ounce leather gloves and you're fighting pretty much where anything goes, with the exception of a few things? Anything can happen. Absolutely. On that same card, something I want to talk about a little bit, and it's almost feeling like we're talking about this guy every episode now, but rightfully so, because the guy's just climbing the sport that damn much. He's just in the headlines that much. He's just that damn dominant. And his name is Khamzat Chimaev, and he's a number 11 ranked welterweight on the planet. Even though the number 11 doesn't make sense to what he is, you know, he's obviously, we know this man is the caliber of a top 5 already. So just even saying number 11, Khamzat Chimaev, maybe it's not wrong because of where he is in the sport. He's still fairly young into his UFC tenure. But it's weird to say the number 11 ranked welterweight Khamzat. Just thought I'd throw that out there. Then we got Gilbert Burns, who's the number 2 ranked guy in the world. And this is a big fight for the welterweight division. This is a fight that Dana White was on record saying in a post-fight interview that could potentially be the next number 1 contender fight. That's pretty much what he said, that it was going to be. Because after that, who's next? I mean, if they don't want to run it back with Colby a third time eventually, and Colby probably still Colby's still going to have to fight 1 or 2 times, right, to fight Usman again, regardless. Like, right now, he probably doesn't deserve it. I mean, you could debate it, but I don't think he does. And I don't think he would fight right now. So it's a situation of who's going to win out of these two guys. And that guy, how do they win? How dominantly do they win? We know Leon Edwards got next. We'll get into that in a little bit. But Gilbert Burns versus Khamzat, it's a huge fight for the welterweight division. Very big implications. I got to imagine Khamzat Chimaev wins that. I got to imagine. You know what I think about this fight? I think it's going to shock a lot of people at how easy Khamzat makes this look. And it's going to shock people, especially because people know who Gilbert is. People know how tough he is, who he's beaten, how he's beaten them, who he's ran through on this run since moving up to welterweight. He's a tough guy. Gilbert's one of the best guys in the world, easily, in the weight class. So if Khamzat can run through him. Now, Khamzat's a minus 510 favorite. I mean, I think that says something right there. A guy who's ranked number 11 in the world versus number 2, and the number 11 guy is a minus 510. You know, I think that says a lot. Another big fight for the welterweight division in the same division. What an exciting division, right? The welterweight division is. And this was going to be on April 16th. It's a fight night. Luque versus Muhammad. So Vicente Luque versus Bilal Muhammad. April 16th in the UFC Apex for now, right? I'm noticing that these are all scheduled. These fight nights are now being scheduled in the UFC Apex. Is that going to change? Was the UFC Columbus thing like a one and done deal? Was what I said in the beginning of the episode false? Or inaccurate, maybe? I thought UFC was already just going to take this show on the road now for the rest of the fight nights, you know? But whatever. Vicente Luque versus Bilal Muhammad, April 16th. Again, it's another big fight for the welterweight division. Very similar to a Khamzat Chimaev versus Gilbert Burns. But I would argue that the Khamzat Chimaev versus Gilbert Burns, slightly higher implications than the Bilal Muhammad versus Vicente Luque fight. Just my opinion. If you want to make the argument similar to the middleweight division of the fresh blood being needed, yeah, you could say Luque versus Muhammad. If they win, why not get him in there with Usman, right? Because, again, what if Gilbert beats Khamzat, right? Then we're kind of seeing the same old story, right? Where Usman just continues to face these guys a second time or maybe a third time soon with Covington. So it's not that interesting. You know, I think people want to see Khamzat win. The UFC probably wants Khamzat to win that fight because he would be that fresh blood in that matchup if he were to come out of it. But again, no matter how you slice it in the Luque versus Muhammad one, no matter who wins, it's fresh blood regardless. It's a new contender. And the reason I keep bringing up the term fresh blood is because, you know, when you have a division where a guy is cleaning out the division, beating guys once, twice now, it's like the UFC is going to be fooled by any newcomer, you know? Like, even if he's slightly less deserving than a guy in the top 5 who's already lost to Usman once or twice, like, I think the UFC is going to like a new contender coming into the fold. And these guys are both exciting, especially Vicente Luque. Who wins that fight? That's a close one, isn't it? Like, when you actually think, let's actually think, guys, about Vicente Luque versus Bilal Muhammad. Is that not a close fucking fight? Like, who do you guys got in that one? Because I was able to, I guess, make my predictions for Volkanovski versus Khamzat, but I would think those are 2 fairly easy fights to predict. This one is tough. Like, if I'm not doing a full breakdown, diving into this fight, just thinking off the top of my head, this is a tough fight, man. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird that I can't think of who would win this fight. At least have some idea. That's going to be a good fight, Vicente Luque versus Bilal Muhammad. I'll be interested in checking out the money line on that one. We got Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje. That's another interesting upcoming fight. Probably one of the more exciting ones. Obviously, it's definitely up there so far for what the UFC has on the website. Yeah, it'll be exciting, but don't expect a 5-round war. Don't even expect like maybe even a 3-4 round war. I think once Oliveira takes this fight to the ground, it's good night, Irene. I really do. If you look at what Charles Oliveira can do to people once he gets him in the ground, you look at the way he can position himself. He can position himself to get into a wide range of submission attempts. Again, when you are on the ground with this guy, he's so dangerous. The guy has the most submissions in UFC history. Okay, he knocked out Michael Chandler to win the title. He just submitted Dustin Poirier. Before that, he submitted Kevin Lee. submitted a bunch of other people in spectacular fashions. A guy, he's exciting. And the thing about Charles Oliveira is we're not looking at a grappler versus a striker here in this one. Gaethje being the striker, of course. Charles Oliveira, again, knocked out Michael Chandler, has, hurt Dustin Poirier even in the stand-up a couple times. Charles Oliveira is a very, very good striker, has become a very, very well-rounded mixed martial artist. And of course, he's a champion, right? He's a 155-pound champion of the world. He's the best in the world now at this point. And Charles, to me, I got to give the guy credit because he was just looking like a guy to me who was like, maybe not a hot potato champion, but I didn't think he was going to just cement himself as a clear-cut guy in the division, and that's what he's done so far. Obviously, we got guys like Islam Makhachev. We got guys like Beneil Dariush coming up the ranks, but, it's not crazy to say that this Charles Oliveira's division right now. Well, it is because he's a champ, but it's not crazy to say that he's running this shit right now, especially if he beats Justin Gaethje. I'm sure a lot of people would have him beating Islam Makhachev. If he does what a Khabib does to a Justin Gaethje, where gets him on the ground, submits him, or even knocks him out, because we know he can do that, there's going to be a lot of stock put into that fight. A lot of people are going to take him very seriously against Islam Makhachev. And the reason I'm not saying that people are going to take Islam Makhachev seriously against Oliveira, and I word it the other way around, is because I've said it. I think Islam will be the champion. I think Islam is the second coming of Khabib. Obviously, it's stupid to say he's exactly Khabib, a carbon copy. He's not. He's very different. He has strengths in departments where Khabib wasn't that strong in, and his wrestling is, you could argue, is up to par with Khabib. So I just think this is a guy that will inevitably be champion. But we'll get into that in a little bit. A good fight, though. An interesting fight because Justin Gaethje, we know, is going to be a threat. He's going to be a threat in those first 5, 10, 15 minutes of the fight. We know we can go 5 rounds, but I just don't think he's going to last in there long enough. I think he's going to be in so many dangerous positions with this guy, whether he gets his back, whether he's in top mount. He can submit you from anywhere. He can submit you standing up on the ground. You name it, Charles Oliveira can submit you in it. Another interesting fight, we got Glover Teixeira versus Yuri Prochazka. This is going to be in Singapore, so that's fun. 6 o'clock p.m., God knows what time in Asia that's going to be. But, again, this is an interesting division. This might be, hear me out. I'm not saying, a lot of people might even think this is the worst division, the weakest division in UFC right now, right? So it's going to sound crazy to say this, but this might actually be the most interesting division in the UFC if you think about it. And the reason why is because it's almost like you don't know who's going to be champion. Like, Glover is very good, but Glover's, 41 now, and Glover hasn't defended the title yet. This title, I think, is going to be a hot potato belt for some time, this 205 champion. Until somebody comes in and fully cements themselves as, I'm the king of 205 after John Jones era, I don't know. I think it's going to be a title that changes hands rapidly because a lot of these guys in the top 5, 6, 7 now could beat any of each other on any given day. Now, that's an interesting fight. Early predictions, I'm sure a lot of people would say, Yuri Prochazka by spinning wheel kick to the fucking dome on Glover. But I'm not saying that, man. I think Glover wins that fight. I think Glover takes him down, man. Wrestling is, we all know what wrestling is, man. If you're a specialist, and I think Glover is one of the best wrestlers, one of the best grapplers in mixed martial arts, and definitely I would categorize him as a specialist. So Glover gets you to the ground. What's Yuri going to do? Yuri's never faced anyone throughout his mixed martial arts career, which is very illustrious and very impressive and, dominant, you could say. Just, with the exception of the couple setbacks he's had, he's been very dominant. But Glover is dominant too. And Glover's dominant in the more dominating discipline that is wrestling, grappling. I don't know. I've said this so many times on this show, and I sound like a broken record at this point, but it's like the thing with Hamzat. It's like the thing with Islam, like Glover. It's like what I thought with Derek Brunson against Cannonier to some extent. I'm not saying he's like a full-on specialist like them, but if you have a wrestling advantage in a fight over the guy, clearly, like, that is such a big advantage. Yeah, that is such a big advantage. Now, we hinted at this a couple times. Let's move on now. Since we don't have any upcoming pay-per-views, let's just talk about, like, the state of every division. Okay, let's talk about where they are. Just talk about how every division is right now. And let's start with flyweight, men's flyweight. It's a division we talked about a little bit before. It's a division where it's sort of lockstep at the top with Brandon Moreno and Davison Figueiredo, but we have just seen a new contender emerge. We now see a guy who, if you threw him in there to fight for the title next and not Brandon Moreno, it's okay. It makes sense. Kai Kara-France is exciting. He's got power. He's a guy who comes to fight. He comes to fight. Now, we know Brandon Moreno and Davison Figueiredo do that, but that's why people love them. That's why they're the two best and most exciting flyweights on the planet. They bring the fight. Pantoja, guys like that, Askar Askarov, they're very good, but I wouldn't say that they bring the fight like these other guys do. These other guys are far more exciting, and they just so happen to be the best three guys in the division right now. So credit to Kai Kara-France. We talked about this a little bit in the previous segment. My scenario on it, who gets a title fight next, this, that, and the other. Davison Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno is more of a box office attraction, right? That's going to bring in more pay-per-views. That's going to bring in more eyes, more excitement from the mainstream, from the casual audience. But the thing is, if you're talking about what's right ethically, morally to the sport, what makes most sense to the infrastructure, the division, how it should work, Kai Kara-France technically should be fighting for the belt next because Brandon Moreno, lost. He just lost. He just lost. And say what you want about that, but, that's it. It's almost done, But, again, there's always room for the door to be open because it was so exciting, because before the emergence of a Kai Kara-France in this fight, it seemed like those were the clear-cut two guys in the division because we've never seen a fourth fight ever in UFC history. So that gives it I think that they're going to do the Davison fight versus Brandon Moreno, the fourth, and I think they're going to do it. Davison obviously went on Twitter recently and said that Brandon, to reiterate what I said earlier, he said that Brandon said something racist, something along those lines, he said, and now the fight's off, whatever. I don't know if I'm buying that. But if that does happen, if that's true, if Davison has some say in who he fights next, whatever the case may be, we might be seeing Davison Figueiredo versus Kai Kara-France. But 100%, you can book it. Davison Figueiredo is fighting either Brandon Moreno or Kai Kara-France next, probably this summer, no exception. Bantamweight, interesting division. We got an enemy, we got a villain here at the top of the throne, Aljamain Sterling. I don't hate the guy, but MMA community seems to hate this guy now. I can't say I condone or I even agree with some of the actions he's done, like taking pictures with the belt and all that crap. But nonetheless, I think my biggest issue and everyone else's is a guy's clearly not the best bantamweight on the planet, and he's wearing the gold belt. He's the champion. And anytime that's a deal, there's going to be uprising, there's going to be complaints, there's going to be haters. Listen, if Aljamain Sterling was clearly the best, I wouldn't have anything to say about it. So I'd say, hey, man, credit to you. I have nothing against Aljamain Sterling. I think he's a very good fighter. He beat one of my favorite fighters in all of mixed martial arts, Corey Sandhagen, fairly quickly. And look how that loss is aged. I think it's aged fairly well because Corey's shown that he's one of the three best guys on the planet in that division. So, hey, Aljamain beat him. Respect to Aljamain. And Aljamain's beating other guys as well. Respect to Aljamain. But do I think Aljamain's better than Petr Yan? No, absolutely not. I think Petr Yan's the best guy in the division. Do I think Aljamain's better than TJ Dillashaw? No, absolutely not. Do I even know that Aljamain's better than a Jose Aldo? I'm not as positive. I'm not as certain that he's not better as the other two that I just mentioned, but I just don't know, guys. I don't know. If Jose Aldo were to fight Aljamain Sterling, guys, who you got? I think a lot of people would be putting their money on Jose Aldo. Not saying most, not saying some, but I think a lot of people would tend to agree that Aldo could win that fight. So, I don't know. I'm looking at a division where it's weird, right? Because the champ almost shouldn't be the champ. No disrespect, Aljamain. Featherweight, we got Volkanovski versus Max Holloway. Now, how many times do I have to beat this table, man? 1A, 1B, those two guys. I don't want to talk about anybody else. The only thing I will talk about in regards to the rest of the division, a potential contender outside of the 1A and 1B that is Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski, is because we all know that Korean Zombie ain't going to beat Volk unless some crazy shit happens. Arnold Allen is now ranked number 6. That's a new contender. That's fresh blood. Bryce Mitchell's only number 9, which is, I feel like he should be higher, but whatever. Bryce Mitchell and Arnold Allen are the two guys that are going to be that next breed of contenders in the featherweight division. That's what I think. I think outside of Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski, you're looking at either Arnold Allen or Bryce Mitchell as the next guy that could legitimately be a threat to one of those two guys that could compete with them. Maybe Josh Emmett. I think he is a dark horse of that division. If I have to point out a dark horse at featherweight, I think it is Josh Emmett, a guy who's been slept on in his career. And if you look at his record, you say, oh, he beat this, and this, and he only lost to that? Wow, he's good. Very good fighter. Very underrated, very under the radar. I mean, he lost to Jeremy Stephens pretty badly with that knockout a few years ago or whatever, whenever it was. But I mean, hey, Jeremy Stephens is a beast, man. It fucking happens. Dustin Poirier got starched by Michael Johnson. Do people even remember that? I mean, like, whatever. Lightweight Charles Oliveira is the champion, right? And he's fighting Justin Gaethje. We just spoke about that. I do envision Charles Oliveira winning that fight. Here's how I see lightweight playing out. I don't know about you guys. It's very simple to me. We go through these divisions and, we do process of elimination. And if you look at this division, again, quite simply, I will draw the picture for you. Before year's end, it's going to be Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev for the 155-pound title. And you're ready for this? Islam Makhachev is going to win. He will be the champion of 155 pounds. There's a new Khabib in town, boys. Maybe not the same Khabib, but nonetheless, a very dominant Dagestani wrestler that has a clear-cut intention of taking your ass to the ground and smashing you. So, again, lightweight division. You got to bring up Charles's name because he's a champ right now. But when I just look at anyone else that's ranked, anyone of note in that division, I look down the list of rankings. Islam Makhachev just fucking screams at me in the face. Like, there he is. Just talk about him. Now, I do think Beneil Dariush is the second best guy in the division. I think he would stylistically present the best matchup, the best test for Islam in that top 5 right now. Notice I'm talking about Islam like he's a champion. But yeah, I don't know. It's crazy how Gaethje and Poirier are still 1 and 2. But no hate, I love those guys. But it's almost like you're going to see them maybe make their way out of that top 5 soon if they can't get a win or two against these new up-and-coming contenders. Welterweight, I don't want to say 1A, 1B, but we got Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington. Maybe you can say because a lot of people would argue that Colby won a lot of the rounds against Usman. How many? I'm not going to specify. I don't want to be controversial. You guys come at me hard, so I'm not going to say what number. But Colby Covington won rounds against Kamaru Usman, and a lot of people think that he's clearly the second best welterweight on the planet, and I would tend to agree. But just because you're clearly the second best in a weight class, does that quite make it a 1A, 1B situation like a Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski at featherweight? I don't know. I don't think so. And the fact that Usman actually, finished him, the fact that Usman actually was able to finish him one of those times, to me, doesn't make it that clear between those two. But nonetheless, it's Kamaru Usman at champion, sitting above everyone, and then we just have Colby Covington sitting above all the contenders. And then in the far back, if you peek, when you're at the beach, and you're a little kid and you're sitting in the water and you're floating, and you're waiting for the waves and they all suck. And you could see that giant wave in the back and everyone starts yelling oh my God, it's coming. You're a little kid and you're fucking excited, whatever. That wave comes and that wave blows your dick off. And either you swim under it or you just roll with it, but it's a hell of an experience. It's fun. That wave is memorable. Guess what? That wave that's coming is Khamzat Chimaev. He is the fucking tsunami of the welterweight division, if you want to put it into terms of the ocean. But whatever, man. Khamzat's that wave that you see from far away. Holy shit. So we got Kamaru at the top. Colby's chilling below him. Not too far below him. And then there's a huge gap. No one else is there. And then slowly working their way up, you see Khamzat. That's sort of how I would categorize the welterweight division. If you want to say, hey, man, what the fuck? What about Sean Brady? What about, Vicente Luque? I don't know. I don't see it. Sean Brady's very good. Sean Brady, what is he, undefeated? I don't think Sean Brady's showing us any signs that he can't hang with those guys. So I'm not going to disqualify. We'll see. But he has a lot to prove still, a few fights to win at least before he can even be in the caliber of even like a Gilbert Burns, Leon Edwards. Speaking of Leon, he is fighting the champion, right? So, we got to give Leon a shot in that fight. Do I give him a great one? No, I think Usman beats him for the second time. Yes, they fought once already a long time ago. Probably irrelevant to this fight, but I think Usman wins again. A lot of people think that, if it's funny because a lot of people think Leon's going to get fucked out of the title shot again. And I've actually been on record saying it. You could check it out in some of my videos. But, I've already heard what I needed to hear from Dana, from Kamaru. It's looking like Leon's going to be next no matter what happens in the Gilbert Burns versus Hamza Chimaev fight. Even if Hamza finishes him spectacularly, which I would still argue that they're whatever. We'll see. But you got to think Leon's next. And you got to think Leon's probably going to lose, right, based on the dominance. Middleweight, it's a simple scenario here of 1A, 1B, just like featherweight. Not anything crazy to talk about. Israel Adesanya, Robert Whittaker. But it's almost like the Covington thing where I've said, like the Covington Usman, where is it quite 1A, 1B like featherweight? I don't know. But these two guys are clearly the two best guys in the division, so that is still remains true. Robert Whittaker and Israel Adesanya, of course, I'm referring to. We got an interesting fight coming up with Marvin Vettori and Robert Whittaker. But even that fight, it's interesting, right? Because those are two of the best guys in the world. And, one of those guys would obviously be able to fight for a title with a win like that. But the problem is they're both 0-2 against the champion. The problem is he's wiping out everyone in the division. So it's tough to say. We're going to have Jared Cannonier versus Israel Adesanya next. Is it a fight that is fun? Sure, it's fun, but am I like overly stimulated by it in the sense of like, oh, who's going to win? Who's going to win? No, you got to believe Jared Cannonier may want to keep it standing. His strengths lie in the boxing, right? Whether he has an edge over Adesanya in the grappling or not. And you got to anticipate that's where the fight's going to be in the standing, right? A lot of it's going to be stand-up. Adesanya, who's going to beat Adesanya standing? The only way Adesanya's going to get beat is to implement a tactic that Whittaker tried to do, right? He was very close and fell very short. And he wrestled Adesanya and was able to control some of that time on the ground in the fight and not standing, not getting lit up. Because anyone's going to lose to Adesanya in the stand-up. Same thing as Jan Blachowicz. So it makes you think, like, who's going to beat Adesanya? Let's talk about an interesting development in the middleweight division, though. We got Alex Pereira, who's now ranked unranked. Guys, dude's fucking unranked, and he's going to fight Sean Strickland. Like, I don't know if that fight has been fully announced yet, but I've been dying to talk about this. So we got Sean Strickland versus Alex Pereira? Like, why would Sean... All right, I got two big outcomes from this fight. Number one, why the fuck would Sean Strickland take that fight? I'm impressed. It showed me what a savage he is. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm a bigger fan now, but you want to realize how savage that is to take a fight like that at this time when you're ranked number 4. You don't have to face a killer like that. And Sean Strickland is going to want to keep the fight standing as well, just like what we talked about. You're going into the strengths of Pereira. Like, Sean Strickland's going to fucking stand and bang with this guy. Do I see him maybe adding a tactic in this fight or a game plan where he uses some wrestling and his coaches are realistic? Like, hey, man, this guy's the best fucking kickboxer in the world, maybe. How about we take it to the ground? Or, how about we make it a mixed martial arts fight a little bit there, buddy? I don't know. Sean Strickland's crazy, man. I don't know what's going to happen. Here's the thing. What if Alex Pereira wins, which is a second crazy outcome that I have, takeaway that I have from this fight that's almost been booked, if it's not already booked, is how is Alex Pereira about to be like one fight away from a title shot? And the reason I say is because like a month ago, 2 months ago, if you would have asked me, I would say, no way. The guy's got to work his way up, win 3-4 fights. Guess what? He's fought once since then, and now he's fighting the number 4 guy in the world. He might fight Adesanya next. And what if he fights Adesanya? People, go look back. Alex Pereira beat Adesanya twice. One of those times, he straight up starched him, flatlined him, KO'd him. Adesanya, like, they needed to bring in the oxygen mask. Alex Pereira in the kickboxing world, back in the day, not too long ago, knocked Israel Adesanya's lights out, man. Beat him straight up. So if it's going to be a kickboxing matchup between the two of them, what's going to happen? Is Adesanya going to be forced to take the fight to the ground or to make it again a mixed martial arts fight just to break that difference? 205, we got this hot potato of a division, right? We got Jan Blachowicz versus Yuri Prochazka fighting for the title, or rather Glover Teixeira versus Yuri Prochazka fighting for the belt. Listen, man, I don't know who's going to win that fight. It's a good fight. Obviously, we know that it's almost the grappler, the prototypical grappler versus striker in that one. It's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. I envision Glover winning just because Yuri's a specialist in the kickboxing department. Glover's a specialist as a wrestler, right? As a grappler. I'm taking the specialist that's a wrestler over the specialist that's a striker any given day in a fight. You know, obviously circumstances could change that outcome, but for now, I'm going to say Glover. Magomed Ankalaev disappointed me a little bit. I've been on record talking about this guy almost as much as Hamzat, almost as much as Islam, saying like this dude's got next, bro. He's like those guys. But I didn't see everything that I wanted to see. I saw a guy who's not quite ready yet. I think he needs one more fight to win in dominant fashion to like stamp himself as the next contender. But he wants to fight for the title next, and it could happen. Who knows? Because he has been very dominant up to the fight that he just had. So obviously for the heavyweight division, not that hard to figure out. We got Francis Ngannou who's a champion, but Francis Ngannou is hurt. He needs knee surgery, so he's going to be out for quite some time, right? Obviously, we have to put an interim title fight in there. As we talked about earlier in the show, there's only 5 guys that really make sense. If you put 2 of them in there to fight for a title against each other, an interim title that is, you'd say, all right, cool. Everyone else doesn't make sense at all. And those 5 guys are Cyril Gane, Stipe Miocic, tied to Ivasa, Curtis Blaydes, I guess I'd put him in there, and then Tom Aspinall. Okay? I'd say the 2 most deserving out of there are tied to Ivasa and Stipe, just because Stipe is the greatest heavyweight of all time. Yeah, he's coming off the loss to Ngannou. And then tied to Ivasa's on like, well, what, a 4 or 5 fight win streak, knocking people out in style. He's riding high. So I'd give it to him and Stipe. Cyril still has to prove himself in the division. He's fairly new to the division, and he did just lose to the champ. Stipe also lost to the champ again, but Stipe's the GOAT, so he can sort of afford to lose to the champ. And he beat the champ already. It would be a trilogy fight. Cyril's 0-1 against the champ. Hey, listen, if you threw a Curtis Blaydes in there, I wouldn't be mad, but I need context at that point. You're going to have to tell me somebody got injured. You're going to have to tell me that another fight was booked and those guys are now taken. Because if you just throw Curtis Blaydes in the mix over Ty, if you just leapfrog him over Ty, Stipe, Cyril, and Tom, I mean, how can you do that? I don't even think Tom Aspinall. I think Tom Aspinall is more deserving. Yeah, he's 6 and Curtis is 4, but Tom Aspinall hasn't had the setbacks that Curtis has had. He's doing things in more spectacular fashion than Curtis is. He's exciting. He's more exciting. But again, Curtis's lack of excitement, to be honest, is pretty overrated. Let's go into the strawweight division. We got Rose Namajunas, the champion. She's fighting, I believe, Carla Esparza next, right? I envision Rose winning this fight. Carla, very tough fighter, very tough girl. But I just don't envision where Carla is going to put Rose in a position that she hasn't seen. Rose starting to get some experience now. You know, she's been in there with some of the best girls in the world. You know, Wei Li, Joanna, et cetera, et cetera. So we've seen Rose in wars. We've seen Rose in short fights. No matter what happens, no matter how it plays out, I'm pretty confident Rose will win that fight. Where does that leave us? It leaves us with Rose as the champion after she's beaten Wei Li and Joanna twice. Correct? If I'm not mistaken, she beat Joanna twice. She beat Wei Li twice. You could debate the Wei Li one. The second one, I thought Wei Li won. Whatever. But it doesn't matter. Rose is the champ. You know what is a shame to me? I mean, man, it's like, if Tatiana Suarez was in this division, I think she would have smashed all these girls already and been the number 1 contender. That's just my opinion. Again, back to the wrestling thing. She is a specialist amongst females, which is rare in the UFC. She is a wrestler. She's a wrestler. You know, she's very dominant at what she does. And I got to believe that if she can get healthy, if she can come back, she wipes out Ribas, Watterson, Tisha Torres, Ansarov, Mackenzie Dern, you know, Marina Rodriguez. Didn't she beat Carla Esparza already? I mean, come on. With the exception of Joanna and Wei Li, like, I'm confident she smashes everyone else. We got flyweight, Jessica Andrade, number 1 contender. We saw what that happened when she faced up against Valentina, who, of course, is the champion. So we're going to have to eliminate Jessica Andrade. Caitlin Chukagian, if I'm not mistaken, lost to Valentina already. Lauren Murphy lost to Valentina. At this point, man, it's just going to have to be like, you're going to have to find someone and just keep rotating a new, fresh contender in, but don't think that Valentina's going to lose. There's no threat here of Valentina losing. Would a fight between Rose and Valentina be fun? Like if Rose moved up a weight class or something like that? I guess, but isn't Rose a bit too small? Like Valentina was fighting females like Amanda Nunes. Look, Amanda Nunes is a huge lady. She's a huge girl. Rose is a small woman. You know what I'm saying? Bantamweight. It's pretty clear for the women's bantamweight. It's Juliana Pena and Amanda Nunes only. That's pretty much it. Everyone else has either had too many setbacks. They've already been ran through. Holly Holm, Alderan, Aspen Ladd, Caitlin Vera. I mean, no. Misha Tate, I get it. It's It's cool to see her back, but I just don't see it. Especially at this stage in her career coming back. You know, Juliana Pena and Amanda Nunes are obviously going to fight again. That's a fight that's going to happen again. It's already been booked. They're on The Ultimate Fighter together. You know, Juliana Pena went on Rogan's podcast and said, oh, I don't anticipate there being beef unless there's beef from Amanda's side, whatever. I'm not buying that shit. She pretty much was clear. It was pretty much clear that she didn't like Amanda much going up to that, leading into that fight. She hasn't liked Amanda for years. Now, maybe it's just a competitive thing, but it seems like there's something a little bit more personal than that. And that's why they're doing The Ultimate Fighter. Maybe the UFC wants to capitalize off that shit. But again, it's so weird even saying Juliana's a champion, seeing her as a champion on the website. We obviously know that she pulled off one of the craziest upsets in UFC history in her last fight. But Amanda said she wasn't right for that fight. So it's going to set up a very fun second fight. Maybe Dana says the biggest female fight ever or whatever. I'm not buying that, but whatever. And that's going to wrap it up, guys. You know, check us out. We're not going to do news for this episode just for the sake of time. We already ran through a lot of it, a lot of stuff in the MMA world anyway. I don't think there's much crazy news circulating besides the whole Masvidal Covington shit. So again, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Check me out on all platforms that are in the bio. I don't even got to say it. Come in for episode number 12. We'll see you there. Be there, be square, baby. Have a good one.